Hi, this is Eric Chase, afternoon host on Cumulus Media Toledo's Q105 and your host right here at 68 Words. With today's guest, we will start with her perspective on disability and accessibility, but after that, we will all be in school with Washington Local School Superintendent Kadee Anstadt, who is filled with boundless energy and nugget after nugget of wisdom for anybody. Like why failure is more important than you think.
I didn't feel like we were preparing that mindset of failing is part of learning. And that's what STEM does, right? You fail a lot in STEM. As a matter of fact, you build failure into the process. It's so fun to walk into a STEM classroom. It's fun to walk into any of our classrooms, but a STEM classroom is just a place where failure happens all the time. And kids learn, oh yeah, and that's part of sports, right? I mean, you swing and you miss. We, I think, are much more intentional about at least exposing kids to a lot more careers and possibilities and saying that it's okay to set a goal and then reset a goal. And part of that is just trying and failing and trying again.
People, places, and spaces doing disability differently, sharing first-hand experience in our podcast. Inspired by the 68 words that sparked the disability rights movement, learn where it started and what's next. Hi, my name is Stuart James, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Ability Center, and welcome to 68 Words.
Would you do me a favor? Can we start with you correctly pronouncing your last name for me?
Mm-hmm. Anstadt.
Okay.
So get there, Anstadt.
Anstadt. That's a T-shirt.
It is, right?
I'm having kind of a fangirl moment because you are frequently in the news. I guess it's 50-50 good and bad. But that comes with the line of work, right?
It does. I feel like we're weighing on the side of mostly good lately. We've had certainly, an incident recently that was very difficult. But I feel like our community, our school, our kids, our families came through that as best we could.
Talking about the shooting at the football game.
I am.
Also, you get to demo some middle schools. Let the kids do it.
I know, right? I have a facilities director that would like to take the first swing, I think. So, he's the one that's in there when the water's up to their ankles or the pipe breaks or whatever. So he might want to have to the first swing.
You have a very unique and diverse background, sales included. So, right. Hey, if you could sell some sledgehammers to take down the middle schools to raise some money for the district, why not do it?
Why not? Golden sledgehammers, right? There you go.
Love it. That'll be double the price of the regular sledgehammer.
It will.
Let me hit you with an Ability Center question right off the bat, and we can dive into some of the other things, including some of the unique jobs you've had in the past.
Okay.
When someone thinks about Washington Local, the school district, and accessibility, what do you want them to think?
That's the place to be, that we look like the model. As the city is trying to become the most disability-friendly city in the country, I would like to be the model for that in schools. I think that that's a challenge that we have to ask ourselves every day, are we? And it's funny, sometimes we think that we're doing a really good job someplace and someone comes back and says, I think you could do better there. And we welcome that. Recently, that was a Gaga pit issue. I've never played Gaga ball, but it is a thing at Washington Local. And someone really challenged us on that. Like, is your Gaga pit accessible? And you know what? We needed to move one to make sure that it was. And I think that's something that some people take as a complaint. I take it as, I think we have to remain in the learner's mindset. And I think that's something that when we're talking about inclusion and equity, that we have to constantly be sitting in that learner's mindset.
In your which is fully a COVID tenure as the superintendent. What are some of the things when it comes to accessibility and disability friendliness that you have been able to implement?
So when I came to Washington Local, the very few months that I was there pre-COVID,
right,
and it was a normal world, we were on the ballot for a levy, building a new school. I had some experience with that in Perrysburg, and I was really, really excited about all the possibilities there. And we passed the levy, and we brought a team together, and then COVID hit, right? So I had immediately when I got there had some questions about how kids were districted. And a little bit of that is with everyone's best intention at heart, we often put kids where resources are. And one of the questions that I asked as a new person, I get to be the new person, was, okay, I get that the resources are there, but why are they going to a different school than their sibling? So if I'm standing at a bus stop or sitting at a bus stop waiting, why am I on one bus and my sibling on another? Those are some of the things that right away I wanted to tackle. And then COVID hit, and it kind of delayed us. And as much as I wanted to plow forward, I often do, my director of student services said, I think we should wait. The kids have had enough disruption. Let's just leave them in their schools for now. We weren't even really going to school at that point.
Right.
So we didn't, but we have unpeeled that now for the most part, except for where parents might have requested to stay someplace. For the most part, our kids now, this year for the first time, and last year in more of a pilot, kids are back in their neighborhood schools. And that's again meant that I'm getting some challenges. We've got teachers that maybe necessarily haven't had students with these kinds of challenging abilities in their classrooms before. And so again, I like to sit in that learner's mindset and say that we're all learning, but that's challenging when you have 25, 26, 27 kids in your classroom, and this isn't something you faced before. But I will tell you that this is something Washington Local has always been known for, and now it's just more, I think it's more prevalent across all schools. Before, where we had a couple of schools that were very good at it, I think all of our schools are good at it now.
Let me go down the route of teachers. Obviously, COVID has made everything on the planet transformational. How have the teachers adapted to a new mindset of being more open to accessibility and understanding some of the challenges that some kids, as long as they're teachers, will have?
I think that COVID actually accelerated that. And I often look at the opportunities that we had during COVID where we accelerated learning. For example, we were not a one-to-one district in all grades. And we had to become a one-to-one district because our kids were going to be at home. So that really accelerated the learning there. I think we got really good at professional development. We developed a model where it was almost like a national conference online. And we've actually had universities look at that model and say, tell us a little bit more about how you did that. So that's great as a K-12 district to have a university come to you and say, hey, we can learn from you. We love that. So I think teachers have had multiple opportunities to learn. I think a lot of us look at some of the things we learned there and said, yeah, that's going to carry forward in my practice forever and ever because all kids can access.
Yeah.
If I've got a kid that's home sick for 10 days in a quarantine, now they're still in school, even though my class might be meeting. So I think we learned a lot, and I think we're getting better all the time. We're really, really excited to have Katie Novak, who's a Universal Design for Learning, very, very well-known speaker, come to us in December right before our holiday break. And she's going to talk to teachers in 7th through 12th grade about even more of that. Like, how do we sharpen that saw and get even better at that universal design approach? I
wonder if your job, your learning curve has been easier than, say, where you have high praise for in Perrysburg, which is not nearly as diverse as Washington Local. In fact, when I'm not originally from here, I'm from Philadelphia. One of the things I'm very proud of, and it's made it easier for myself as opposed to others in these transformational times, I tell people my schools look like Whitmer, where it was a menagerie of different colors, ethnicities, and everything else. And to me, that's Whitmer. And I'm wondering if that array of color across the spectrum, it also applies to the teachers as well. So the diversity, they see it. It's part of their life, so they can learn things pretty quickly.
Right. I would agree with that. I think there's an area where that's actually part of our strategic plan, is to make sure that when we're doing hiring, we are purposefully seeking diverse teachers, classroom aides, custodians, nutrition workers across the board. And we've actually really done a nice job with that goal. You have to have a North Star. That's part of our North Star, is seeking diverse candidates that look like our student body. Part of it is recruiting candidates. So we have a program right now it started last year with our 8th graders. It's continuing with our freshmen this year with BGSU, called Diversifying the Teaching Profession, because that's a problem for colleges. Like, we all want to recruit a diverse teaching profession, but kids of color are not selecting that. Why aren't they selecting it? Because they don't see themselves in the classroom, right. So they don't see them. It's the same in nursing. It's the same in law. It's the same, across many. So we've been very intentional about it. BGSU works with us through a grant through the Department of Education, and we have our diverse staff that kind of mentors students that we've tapped on the shoulder at a very young age, as 8th graders, as 9th graders, and said, we think you'd make a great teacher. You demonstrate empathy, you work well with others, you help kids. We think you have teaching in your future. And they work with a university partner, they work with one of our diverse staff, and then they come together monthly, and we take them to college campuses, and we talk to them about how great the teaching profession is. I think that's one of the things that we watched escalate and then de-escalate very quickly was respect for the teaching profession. I will tell you that I've been on both sides, so I can speak to this as many people cannot. that is a tough, tough job. I can't think of a lot of tougher jobs that I've done in my whole life than standing in a classroom with a diverse set of learners and trying to teach state standards and get them to pass tests and even sit still for a minute so you can get the instructions out so that they can get wiggly. I think I hope that we begin to see that teaching profession elevated again. It's one of the ways we're being intentional about it, and we're also being very intentional about it with diverse students.
They don't make enough money in many cases, as we're finding out. Maybe you can use your sales background and we can sell some advertising in the classrooms on the teachers.
Wouldn't that be great? We could just have them wear T-shirts every day, right? ProMedica T-shirt, and then maybe ProMedica could be, sponsor that teacher. Sorry, ProMedica.
We can turn Whitmer into the third outfield wall.
I like that. Fifth Third, I would be happy to take them as a sponsor.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned something that I've never heard before, and it's applied in sports, where kids are identified early, and you have a great sports program there, specifically the football team, and I know you have a newish basketball coach.
We have a newish. She was a pandemic hire, Anthony Stacy, phenom from Bowling Green State University. Yes. When
sports, we try to identify kids, young adults who will be stars, and give them scholarships and turn them into whatever they have the potential to be. And you just said you're trying to do that in a sense with teachers, with the kids, which I've never heard before, because usually, and again, these are transformational times. We should change everything we do if we can.
Everything.
Before it was, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? It used to be president. Now nobody wants that job. Firefighter, all the things. We would let kids walk their own path.
Right.
You kind of flip that, which I've never heard before. And if you identify talents in kids, say, hey, let me apprentice you or walk you down this path.
I think something that, so I made a visit to China in 2009, and it was the most eye-opening. It was my first trip abroad even, and China was like that's a big place to go when it's your first trip abroad. And I learned so much on that trip. Now, people ask me all the time, why there? It happened to be a college board trip. I'm so glad I went. One of the things that I will tell you they're very good at there is identifying talent. They look for kids' passions and talent, and they nurture it. Now, they end up in a path that they really don't necessarily have a lot of choice about.
Yeah.
I think, one of the beautiful things about America is that our kids have a ton of choice. The kids there were very shocked when I said our kids could change major in college. They were like, wait, what? They get a choice? But I think it's not just there that we try to identify that talent early. One of the other things that we've done at Washington Local since the pandemic is start STEM programming for our kids. So we have a career tech center that is second to none, by the way, up for Toledo's best. So please go vote for the Whitmer Career Tech Center. There's my plug. And also Whitmer High School. But I didn't feel like we were preparing that mindset of failing is part of learning. And that's what STEM does, right? You fail a lot in STEM. As a matter of fact, you build failure into the process. So I was really excited to invite that into Washington Local. That was kind of my background at Perrysburg with Hull Prairie, the school that we built there, which is a STEM designated school. So I was really excited to invite that here. It's so fun to walk into a STEM classroom. It's fun to walk into any of our classrooms, but a STEM classroom is just a place where failure happens all the time and kids learn, oh yeah. And that's part of sports, right? I mean, you swing and you miss, although the Phillies didn't miss much last night.
No, they did not.
It was quite over the fence quite a few times.
He was tipping
incredible.
His pitches.
I tell you, it was an amazing thing to watch. So I have Phillies fans in my family. So I think are much more intentional about at least exposing kids to a lot more careers and possibilities and saying that it's okay to set a goal and then reset a goal. And part of that is just trying and failing and trying again.
I was listening to a recent podcast you did of someone who did not respond to my DM, but the gentleman had a wonderful guest list, and that's where I did all my prep for this.
He's got an incredible guest list.
What's his name?
Brad Rieger.
Tell him to respond to my DM.
I will. I'll actually text him when we're done here and say, Dr. Rieger, let's go.
It was a heck of a podcast, and I learned a lot about you, and I was really excited to talk to you. Mallory asked us to keep this to 30 minutes, and I want to respect your time, but we might go a little beyond because I have so many questions because you're such a fascinating person.
Oh, thanks.
Go back to I think what you said during his podcast is we want to bake failure into things. And that's a big thing of mine. 4 years ago now, it's COVID times. Everything's a little weird with the clock. I did a Epic Toledo Young Professionals presentation. And it was tying failure together to mental health. And your sports. I use the Michael Jordan example. And look, you can parse things in a million different directions. We're not going to do sports talk radio here. Everybody knows he's the greatest basketball player ever. 6 championships, never lost the finals. But he got his butt kicked a lot in the playoffs by the Pistons mostly. He had to fail a lot before he could succeed. And I think a lot of people today, regardless of the generation, are afraid to fail and don't understand its importance. So can you monologue more about how you vision baking failure into things and why it's so vital?
None of us are going to be successful in 100% of what we do. We often see with our students that are of high ability that they are so afraid to fail that they take the safe route. And Thomas Edison is, one of the easiest examples that comes to mind, but 100 others who failure was a daily part of his life. He failed 1,000 times, right?
Do you remember the specific quote?
It was like 999, something like that, right?
I didn't fail 99 times. Yeah, I learned 99 lessons.
Right, exactly. And I think that we don't value failure enough. The state doesn't value failure enough. The state, gives us a state test for our kids from the time they're very, very little and starts to talk to them about what their achievement levels are. And honestly, as the state moved more to a growth model, I was excited about that because at least now we're talking about growth, but we're measuring a point in time and pigeonholing a kid into a reading group or you're a math kid or you're not a math kid based on a test or a failure. And one of the most brilliant teachers I ever had never graded a test until you tried the second time. So they gave you back and they showed you what was wrong, but then you had the opportunity to go back and correct it. And guess what? You really learn when you do that, right? You go back and you learn. And it's probably why I liked math so much in college, because that particular professor was really good at baking failure. She knew we'd fail. She knew some people wouldn't study at all. She knew some people would study hard and still fail. I think, I've got a recent example of a relative of mine that probably bit off a little more than he could chew and failed. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to step back and say, okay, how do we make recovery from that? Sometimes it's that we mark time, we change things, we set a different goal, but we keep going. I think one of your questions later was about a book that I would write, right? Maybe that was Mallory's question.
Maybe Mallory's question.
Mallory's question was, and I was thinking so much about that, and I think it would be perseverance through purpose. So our purpose is, not to solve a math problem. Our purpose is to become a student of math, to understand how math impacts the world. And when we label a kid because they failed, or an adult because they failed at some random math test in 8th grade, we've done such a disservice because now I've labeled myself as a failure. We have got to bake more of this in. It's what I love about STEM. It's what I love about music.
Well, you talk STEM. It's science, and the basis of science is experimentation.
Right.
Like the Edison quote.
Yep, exactly. I think music is another place, and that might be where I probably honed that skill a little bit as a kid. My dad was very much a get back up, try again, get back up, try again. So I grew up with that mentality, but I think music, the first time an instructor sets a piece in front of you, I've heard that music. I've been in, I've played that music, and I've heard that music from bands and orchestras. It's not a good sound. It's not. But through practice, through perseverance, through trying again, and sometimes we're only taking little pieces of it and practicing it, and sometimes we're practicing the whole piece. I think music has a lot to teach us about trying again, failing, coming back, trying it again.
I think you and I could do an entire podcast, several hours long, going tit for tat with failure quotes.
I have a lot of failure stories, but we don't want to go tit for tat there.
But you should.
I do. I'm never afraid to share those stories.
And so. Failure is important, but don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Right. I mean, that's what failure is about, is teaching us, having us learn. A really powerful thing that happened to me again, as I was a director of teaching at Perrysburg, and we had just started STEM there, and our STEM instructor there, who's just phenomenal, the kids were done early and they wanted something else to do. And he's like, okay, design a Lego. So they went to design a Lego thinking, I've played with Legos my whole life. This is going to be easy. And then they realized it wasn't so easy, right? You have to build the little dots in. They were 3D printing it. So they designed it, and then they realized it didn't fit with another one because there was something a little off. They failed 8 times. And when they gave us the little Lego at our board meeting, it said V8 on it. Failure built in. So, and they were proud of that. They were proud that they had kept trying till those Legos fit together. So often we're giving a final grade on something that was, really, it's not final. We want them to keep learning. So I think that's probably my my biggest takeaway is let's just keep trying and let's learn from what we did wrong and adjust it. And here's the thing, it's probably going to be wrong the next time too. We need to keep making adjustments. Don't stop making adjustments. Just keep pushing forward.
You have a prior relationship with the Ability Center, and
I do.
It barks, it likes to be pet, and it has 4 legs. Tell me about that.
So my first foray in that was actually getting to know the Ability Center through a colleague in Perrysburg who was bringing a puppy to work every day. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And she twisted our arm, my husband's and my arm, into coming to, if you go to a graduation, it's over for you. You go, you see the difference those dogs make, and that's what happened to us. My husband, I have to give him 100% credit, Mike raised 5 dogs that went into service. We had 5 different puppies. We loved them all, and it's so difficult to say goodbye. But then you get to graduation, and you watch in that moment the difference that animal is going to make for that human, and you realize that God knew what he was doing when he put dogs on earth. So right now we have the great honor at Washington Local of having Granger as one of our family members. She is actually at Silver Creek today doing her work, doing great work that she does every day. So we love.
What is her work like?
So her work is a little different every day. So her work is going to classrooms. Sometimes it's calming someone. A lot of times it's a reward. If we get through today without this, then you're going to get some Granger time. Sometimes it's reading to her. She's really very good at that. She'll sit and put her chin in your lap, and it looks like she's reading a book, and that's kind of what she's doing. I couldn't understand, having raised service dogs, when I first met Granger and spent a little time with her, I couldn't understand initially why she wasn't in service, because she's so brilliant, so smart. She can learn things so quickly. Really just the fastest, I think, of any dog I've ever seen that we ever worked with personally. And then when I got her out, I realized that she probably has the highest degree of empathy I've ever seen in a dog. She is one that pulls me in the direction when I don't see someone who needs her. When she's in a room, when we're having a meeting, she leans in to the person that just needs her a little more than, and it's so often afterwards that someone will tell me, how did she know? And I don't know how she knows, but she knows. And she's such a piece of therapy to us as adults, and also for our kids. Our kids just adore her.
Is it one of those things where you go, why the heck didn't we do this sooner?
So actually, Washington Local already has 3 therapy dogs at 3 of the elementary schools, or 2 at the elementary school and 1 at the high school. So we were kind of familiar with that already. We'd never worked with the Ability Center, and of course I brought that relationship with me. So it's kind of one of the, new guy, right? The new guy's got a relationship with the Ability Center. So that's how we ended up.
Oh, I mean, why didn't we do this in 1987?
Or 19. Yeah, exactly. Right. I think there's a difference. People ask, I get a question a week about, I want to get my dog, certified to be a therapy dog, and then I'm going to bring him to school. No. So there's such a difference. This is probably a good commercial for this as well. Such a difference between a dog who is certified for therapy and goes and visits a nursing home, or the dogs that come from the Ability Center, the dogs that we work with, have been trained in a school, have done the full day of work. There's a big difference between being a classroom volunteer for an hour at a classroom party and being the teacher in the room, right? Big difference there. Same thing with the dog. It really takes a very special canine to be able to spend an entire day. It's exhausting. I mean, she is exhausted at the end of the day, and it takes good humans that also are communicating well. So I think we've got the perfect combination with her.
What's her favorite treat? What does she get when she has a good day at work?
She is very. She likes anything that Kim Holmes makes. Let's just be honest about that. I can't compete with that. I could never compete with that. But she loves the dehydrated buffalo. Loves that. So,
okay.
Yep.
Peanut butter at all?
Peanut butter, yeah. She knows I'm a sucker for the peanut butter Kong.
Got it.
So, yep, she knows that's my go-to.
Wait, you try to get the peanut butter out of the Kong?
Yeah, well, no, I try. I might take a taste as it goes into the Kong, so I might do that. Yeah.
One last question about Ability Center things. Tell me where things are with the Inclusive Playground project.
So Inclusive Playground, actually, they broke ground. We had our groundbreaking, but the equipment was delivered yesterday. So we've got beautiful weather today. So my expectation is that if I drive by, there's something going on over there. It'll take a couple weeks to get in, but we're really, really excited to see that pop. I think we've got another Ability Center question. I want to talk about our adaptive sports that we're working on with Stuart.
Please.
So again, learner's mindset really on display there. Stuart asked about maybe some adaptive sports. I wasn't really sure. I'm pretty good at sports, but I wasn't sure I knew what he was talking about. So I brought my Tina Dake is our PE, our physical education department chair. So I brought her with me. She is the best at her craft. I mean, amazingly talented and skilled. And it was so fun to watch her sit with Stuart and be a complete learner. She really literally didn't have any idea what was about to happen. And now I'm watching it happen, and it's just the most incredible thing. So we are the beneficiaries right now of 10 wheelchairs, where Tina is developing with her advanced PE kids a wheelchair basketball unit. And the kids are learning to play wheelchair basketball, which is different in many ways. I learned so much about the differences in wheelchair basketball, that there are able-bodied people that play on those teams and as well. So our kids in that advanced PE class have been now learning and practicing for a couple weeks. I got to duck into a practice last week. It was really fun. And then they're going to play against our girls and boys basketball teams at a pep rally on Friday.
Good.
They will not have been in the chairs. So I think they kind of know it's coming, but they have had no ability to practice ahead of time. So, we've got kids that aren't necessarily basketball players that have certainly played basketball, but that are, going to be more adept in the chair, right? And honestly, through Stuart, we talked a lot about this, just normalizing chair use. We don't want people to wonder about that. Like, it's just a different mode of transportation, right? That's how I get around. So I think that's one of the things we saw bringing Aaron Fotheringham, Wheels there. We just want to normalize that. And I think we're doing a good job with that.
What was the feedback?
Oh my gosh. To hold 500 middle schoolers in the palm of your hand would be any teacher or administrator's dream. I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like it. We had them in the Whitmer Auditorium. We split them into two groups because we're big. We had about 520 kids in each group. He literally held them in the palm of his hand. And I wouldn't tell you that he's a super dynamic speaker, but he's genuine.
He has 500,000 followers.
I mean, he's just amazing. And the kids got to see America's Got Talent. They got to see that video first, and that is quite a shot. And everybody it was fun watching Simon, very nervously climb up the stairs, and he wasn't even doing anything hard. So I think, again, I had pulled a couple of kids in from the hallway. One had a skateboard under his arm, and I just grabbed him and said, I just want you to sit and listen for 5 minutes. And Aaron ended up signing his skateboard for him. That kid just leaned in and hung on his every word. And again, not a better example. I can talk all day about failure, but man, you're seeing it right there. That guy failed way more times, and he just keeps getting up and trying again. It's one of the best examples of perseverance I think I've ever seen.
He told us when he visited here for the podcast, and I loved it. It's one of the quotes that I'm stealing. It's because I asked him, did you ever think about giving up? Especially when he told me he was picking his teeth up off the ramp. He said, just one more time. Just do it one more time.
Which is what he said right before he went right back up, right?
Yeah,
one more time.
Some rapid fire questions here. This is more of a not a question of mine, but a point. If I were to suggest that you write a book, it would be about what would Kadee Anstadt suggest everybody have to do before they become an adult? And when I think of this question, I'm asking based on what you did before you do now.
Okay. I would say for sure, before you become an adult, you have to have a job. I just saw a really startling statistic lately, just recently rather, that the number of 16 and 17-year-olds that are entering college or career that have never had a job in high school is startling. The drop is just incredible.
I have a theory on that. Can I?
Yeah.
My theory is simply kids are pressed real hard to get into college, and many of them take their after-school stuff super seriously, especially sports. That's why we have a lot of now hiring signs that's been overlooked, because those kids are not there anymore like we were.
Yeah. No, I think that when I look back at my early jobs, flipping pizzas, stocking shelves at the F&M drugstore, all were things that drove me to know that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, right? I mean, it was a job. I was putting cash in my jeans. That was really important on Friday night. But I really believe that we've got to get kids into the workforce early. And maybe it's just shadowing. Maybe it's, we do a lot of that at Whitmer High School, where we connect kids with a lot of different careers and people so that they just get to shadow. Some of those are paid internships. I think washing cars, I mean, a real job for another employer, not your dad sending you outside to wash the car, but actually working at a car wash. I think every kid before they enter college, it should be a prerequisite. Kids need to learn they need to see that first paycheck, which is only 70% of what they thought it was going to be. I always love that question from kids, like, wait, where's the rest of my paycheck? I did the math in my head, $10 an hour times 40 hours. Why am I only getting $300?
Should have paid attention to accounting.
Yeah, they should have, exactly. So I think getting a job was, and working for other people, not my dad bossing me around, being accountable, having to show up on time, all of those things, I think it's really important.
I would like you to write a book on specific careers that anybody needs to do. Because the question in my head when I was listening to your podcast with Brad was listening to you being a salesperson. I'm like, nobody likes doing sales. You did because you were really good at it. And then obviously schools and everything. And I was thinking everybody, especially after the last 2 years, whatever it was, 3 years, everybody should have to do sales, work in a restaurant, be a teacher, and do something civically.
I like all those things. That's a good list. I think, working in a restaurant, hugely important. I think the thing, again, about sales, you go back, you fail a lot. And I didn't like it in the beginning. I think everyone should have to work so that what they sell is what creates their paycheck. That was me. I worked on straight commission. And so if I didn't sell what I was selling, I didn't get paid. And I think that really makes you good at communicating. It makes you good at follow-up. It makes you good at customer service. I think those were good lessons for me. And then I finally worked for someone that actually gave me some education on sales, let me know that failure is baked into it. Like you're not going to sell everything you go out to sell, but about a third of the time you're going to get a hit. Last night for the Phillies, a little more than that. But yes, yeah. So
what's something that, and I think I know your answer, and we've talked about it for the last 30 minutes. What's something from your sales background that makes you really good at what you do now?
Honestly, it is probably the presentation part of it, the passion around. I wouldn't sell something that I didn't believe in, right? Every company I ever worked for, I believed in what they did. Even if it wasn't like a super meaningful thing, I believed in what they did. I believed in the people that worked there. I knew that my sales are what put paychecks in the print shops, in that printer's back pocket. So I think being passionate about what you do and learning to communicate that, I think communication is probably the key.
I was going to say the C word. And in a way, we're all selling something in our adult lives.
Yeah, we are.
Whether you're a veterinarian, whether you're a radio, we're all selling something, even if you're not going and knocking on people's doors, having them slammed in your face.
Right.
You were a pet groomer as well?
Yes. So that was probably my oddest job. I owned a kennel and grooming, actually quite big, 400 over spring break. It was in Hudson, Ohio. And over spring break, everyone in Hudson goes on spring break. They actually shut down some of the restaurants back then. I don't know if they still do, but we would have about 400 dogs for that week of spring break, and usually a couple hundred during the week. So you get to know black labs by the way they look at you, because you'd have 40 or 50 black labs in one building. So I, been a dog lover forever.
What's something you miss about being in the classroom on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, kids. I try to get around kids as much as I can right now, but the best analogy I have of this job is I had a toy as a kid that was that punching bag. So there used to be like a balloon, and it had sand in the bottom, and you would punch it. I suppose, it was the old boxing thing for my parents or whatever. And, you'd punch it and punch it and punch it, and it would keep getting up. And eventually, and that's kind of what the superintendency is. You get a lot of punches in the face, right? But every once in a while it would wilt. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. My dad would come in and he would pump it back up again. Everyone should do a job that, whatever that is, that lifts you up is what brings you back to being willing to be punched in the face again. And I will tell you, for me, that's kids. They lift us up. My entire purpose is around making their lives better.
So kind of like, even on my worst day at work, it's still better than most other places?
Absolutely.
What time do you get up in the morning?
I'm usually up by 5:30.
What do you do when you completely shut down and absolutely will smack yourself in the face for answering an email at night? What do you do when you're shut down?
Sleep. And I don't sleep much. I have a pretty short night. Usually I don't go to bed before 11:30 usually, and I'm usually, awake at 2 a.m. thinking about all the things I need to do the next day. But my one constant is yoga. I practice every morning. That's why my alarm is set at 5:30. I practice yoga every single morning. It's for me. It's for my physical health as well as for my mental health. So, and really nothing gets in the way of that. If I've got a meeting where I've got to be out earlier, I just set my alarm earlier and we do yoga earlier. So,
what's something that people would not believe about you based on your superintendent persona?
People are always surprised to learn that I was a Harley rider. So I owned 4 Harleys. I rode them myself. People always think, oh, you rode on the back. Nope, I owned my own Harleys. I rode motorcycles. I loved that period of my life. For that, I loved that I got off of one, put it away, and didn't ever get hurt badly on one. So a lot of people are not that fortunate, but I just saw a lot of the country riding my motorcycle, and I loved it.
Your superintendency, that's the correct word, is the epilogue of this great book of your life. Do you know that?
No, I didn't.
You are, I could literally sit here and ask you things for hours. I didn't know about the sports stuff. I'll ask you the Phillies thing when we're done here.
Okay.
One last question, and thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to do this. What's a controversial, as we depart candy corn season, we're getting into his Die Hard, a Christmas movie, all that nonsense. What's a controversial internet opinion like that you have?
A controversial internet opinion?
Like no pineapple on pizza, that kind of nonsense.
Oh, gosh. I would say, oh, man, you're right. You stumped me there. I think probably the one right now that I'm just the amount of, I don't know, the amount of anger, right? That's my thing right now. Like people are getting on the internet to put a statement out there that they don't even necessarily believe, just to see if they can stir up anger. So to me, it's like, really? I just don't have the bandwidth for that. I try to keep my bandwidth pretty clear, pretty focused on kids, and I guess, yeah.
That's not
pineapple on pizza.
That's not controversial at all.
No, it's not. Well, but it is. I mean, I don't know why. There's enough people out there doing it that it stirs up. I will tell you, I am not on social media. I have a very secured Twitter follower list. It's either my football players, my Whitmer Sports, or really great educational leaders that I follow. I curate that very carefully because I won't let the negative in.
Yeah.
And this once in a while it sneaks in. So pineapple on pizza? Oh gosh, yeah, I would do that. There's not, here's the thing. I'm that person that will try almost anything. As far as food no.
By the time this airs, Thanksgiving will be around. White or dark meat?
White for sure. And I just came off being a vegetarian for almost 2 years. So I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving this year.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for visiting. Thanks for being the everything that I had hoped to chat with. I could sit here and chat with you for hours. Thanks for taking time. Thanks for leading Washington Local in the way that you are and all the great things, including the new buildings to come.
Oh, thank you. And go Phillies.
This is Chief Armstrong with Toledo Fire and Rescue. 68 Words has been a production of the Ability Center, hosted by Cumulus Media's Eric Chase. Engineering provided by Will Mellon and executive produced by Mallory Crooks. If you, your group, organization, or business is interested in hosting a disability awareness experience or have other inquiries, please contact info@abilitycenter.org. Until next time, think differently.